it's Karen Gray. So let me ask you a question. Are we preparing people for the roles they have today, or building the skills they'll need for roles that don't exist yet? Technology is evolving, change is constant, and people don't automatically keep pace. It takes intention. So the real question here for leaders is this: are we deliberately building future-ready teams, or quietly assuming performance will sustain itself? That's exactly what we're exploring today. Hello and welcome to Regen on Purpose, where we explore regenerative leadership, delivery, and systems that strengthen over time. I'm Karen Gray. Let's begin. I'm joined by someone who has decades helping organizations build that kind of capability that lasts, Colin Sparkes. Colin, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
And a good morning to you, Karen.
Thank you. Today's episode feels quite special to me because Colin and I have actually worked together before. We go way back in time when skills development and corporate training looked very different. When PCs were only starting to appear in the workplace, those were interesting times and exciting times to be part of that shift. Organizations are navigating new technology, new skills, and new ways of working. And even back then, something stood out for me. Technology moves quickly, capability doesn't. It has to be developed deliberately. And that tension between keeping up and building capability has never felt more relevant than it is now. Colin has spent years helping organizations build their people, not just teaching skills, but helping them perform better over the long term. So today isn't just about training programs, it's about capability. Because performance doesn't just happen, it's built. And Colin, that's something you've dedicated your career to. So before we dive in, for those listening who may not know you, could you share a little about your background and the kind of work that you've been focused on?
I can. My background is diverse, to say the least. And I've been around a while. So suffice to say, from engineering to sales to training, with a whole host of interesting vocations in between. My main passion has always been training. Be it teaching someone how to use a mouse device in the 80s, coaching a football team in the 70s, and for decades thereafter, or business development in the present day. I have a small consulting company in the UK, and I work closely with one in South Africa. Their offerings: commercial services, health and wellness, and training, mainly.
Okay, thank you for that. Very interesting background you got.
Diverse, as I said.
Absolutely. And well, we've worked before, so we understand our backgrounds are quite different, but we worked well together.
Yes.
So you've gone through several waves of change firsthand, seeing the skills come into the workplace and then having to adapt. So when you look back at those days and compare them to today, what has genuinely changed in how organizations think about capability?
That's a great question. So let me give you my take on it.
Okay.
In simple terms, capability used to be a question of whether you could do your job well today. Now it's more about whether you will still be able to do it well tomorrow. I think organizations have tried to move from training and developing what were essentially static skills to trying to build a type of dynamic adaptability. That's not easy. And recruitment is often the key to achieving it. Adopting early training interventions, not waiting to catch up with the change, has given some organizations the edge.
It's interesting to listen to that, because even with all the advantages, some patterns still are familiar. Why do you think so much training still struggles to create lasting behavior?
The simple answer is it's not easy. Changing employee actions, their habits and attitudes often takes more time than an organization is prepared to invest into it. It takes reinforcement, repetition, and feedback. It seems like a lot of training is still a one-time event with little or no follow-up, accountability, and without that, you'll struggle to achieve change.
Oh, that's interesting. So can you share some examples of training that didn't quite land and what really was going on underneath?
I can. You will remember it too.
Uh-huh.
We sold a training package to a large South African-based corporate entity, 500 plus people.
Yep,
And we recommended a skills assessment
I remember.
of all the participants before the training commenced. That would have identified skills gaps and allowed us to tailor the training to address those particular gaps. The company in question passed on our offer and felt they had a handle on the skill levels of their employees and basically had everyone undertake the exact same generic training. To say training didn't quite land would be an accurate observation of what transpired. To build lasting skills, you must understand the level to pitch them at. Otherwise, you pitch the training at a level that is either too low or too high. That's exactly what we did in the case of this organization. And, well, to coin your phrase, it didn't land as well as it could have.
I remember that customer, well, that client. So,
Yes.
but that's a great point. So it either lands too high or too low, and it's not just delivering courses and workshops, right? We really want to develop skills that can last.
Yep.
So what really helps people develop in ways that last?
Well, learning, development, accountability, mentorship. That's the short answer. The key is, of course, the combination of those elements. Relevant training delivered at the correct level and reinforced.
Got it.
That helps people grow. The accountability, that is having to demonstrate what has been learnt, either by testing or in workplace observation.
Okay.
And then the ongoing mentorship that can often lead to the strengthening of long-term performance. That's my answer to that one.
Okay, that's really interesting. So have you got an organization where something has landed particularly well? And what did this look like in practice?
Well, I have. I worked in an organization for several years, an old established English media and publishing company that entered the digital age with a serious intent. It operated in more than 100 countries,
Okay,
30,000 employees,
right.
and I had responsibilities in over 60 of them. Training was an ongoing activity.
Okay.
It was short, it was sharp, and conducted often on the job.
Right, okay.
Many of the projects were cross-functional. And that brought employees from different departments and regions to work on these shared projects. There were several mentors across the organization who were tasked with nurturing team members,
Okay.
encouraging them to step up and perform to their full potential. Let me give you an example.
Okay.
In this region that I had, I traveled to about 64 different countries.
Wow. It's some traveling.
And because of my seniority, they allowed me to fly in the front of the plane, sometimes known as business class.
Right.
I never did that. What I would do was downgrade the ticket, buy another one, that fell well within the budget restrictions and take some junior member from the team along with me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's real on-the-job training. I think that what tends to happen in organizations is that the hierarchy takes advantage of some of the perks. Some people would say that traveling to many countries is a perk until you've spent hour after hour in the transit lounges and you don't feel that way anymore.
Yeah.
But exposing people that have been trained to real-world situations while mentoring them, not throwing them in the deep end,
Okay.
I think that's what it looks like in practice, to answer your question. And here's a company that entered into a drastic change in technology and thrived.
Oh, amazing. So they're doing really well, I guess. Yeah.
Indeed.
Excellent.
Indeed they are.
And how was that young employee that you took on the plane? Has she been thriving?
I mean, I took several. I probably attended 30 or 40 conferences
Right, okay.
while I was part of this organization, and I'm happy to report that the vast majority of those people are now in senior leadership positions, and I like to think that they benefited from that early exposure.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, that's great to hear the real work that goes on behind it. It's not just kind of talking about things. So when deadlines tighten and budgets shrink, development is often the first thing that pauses. Why do you think that happens, in your opinion?
Well, I've heard it 100 times. The two most used objections to training: not enough time, not enough budget.
Okay.
In fairness to those using the objection, training is often drawn out, it's expensive, and doesn't always impact productivity much. It's the reason existing skills have to be assessed and an understanding gained of what the required skills are for the various functions.
Right.
Gaps are then identified, and training can target that gap. The training is shorter, it's sharper, and much more effective.
Okay.
I have a feeling that you have to be talking about the return on investment as a training company, and you have to be able to demonstrate it. That often will remove the objections.
Got it. Okay. And then you're obviously adding another layer that you do ongoing support with the companies. Is that normally what happens?
Indeed.
Okay.
Indeed.
Brilliant.
Indeed it is.
So what is the long-term cost of making this decision, not of pausing the training? And how does the impact play out over time?
Well, I mean, corporate history is littered with many examples of companies that couldn't adapt to changing times. Let me not be the one to expose that. Google it. There are many, many examples of companies that didn't adapt to a technology shift, struggled to even understand customer behavioral changes, and of course collapsed under competitive pressure. Ongoing training and development of employees creates nimble minds. And within your organization, you'll often be able to recognize changes happening and start creating strategies to address them if you have people that are up to date and trained in those changing technologies.
Oh, okay. That's very interesting. Thanks for sharing. If we take the view that performance starts with capability, for the leaders listening today, where do you suggest they begin?
Good question. Develop a training plan together with a training organization that understands how to drive a return on the training investment, knows how to demonstrate said return, and has trainers and mentors with the ability to transfer skills. That way, development and growth occurs long after the training.
Okay. And I guess when we were working together in these training organizations, you were quite particular about the trainers which you put on sites with clients. You didn't just choose anyone, right?
I mean, it was key for me. It's corporate training, dealing with corporate people. It's really, really key that the trainers had some experience, some practical exposure to what they're teaching. Mm-hmm. And that allows them to not only answer the questions that may come up, but to be able to demonstrate a sample. You will remember that every trainee brought with them some work product from the office that once they learned a skill, they could then apply it to that work product, take it back and demonstrate it to the manager who had sacrificed from their budget to have them training. It's really, really key that one is able to take people that have experienced whatever changes are taking place to be the one that is sharing and transferring skills to people to enable them to cope with those changes.
I remember those times when the people used to bring various projects, so it was very interesting.
Yes.
If someone wanted to make one small shift this month, what might that look like? If you give them some tips.
Well, I would say that what's really key and possibly doesn't happen is you need to articulate, break down the required skills, that job spec of your employees. What are the specific skills required to perform their specific function? Okay. Once you have that, measure them against the actual skills they possess. That allows you to create and understand and identify if there is a skills gap.
Okay.
That is where the training should focus, within that gap.
But what about companies, they're growing so fast or they go through mergers? How do you kind of tackle this? Because it's not an easy feat to kind of integrate people and learn skills and have processes in place. How have you dealt with these previously, your experience?
I think that often that's where training companies come in. Mm-hmm. Independent parties that come in with no vested interest from either organization A or organization B and assess the skills. Okay. They have the job spec, they assess the skills, and obviously the people that they're assessing are anonymous to them. There's no biases. And often in an integration, one company is the more senior organization, and you lose skills because of that. But when you independently and objectively assess skills and identify what could help to improve those skills in allowing them to function, often when two organizations integrate, your job function changes slightly. Maybe they're in a different market, maybe they're using different technology. These things can be identified independently, and training can address that immediately. And that, of course, allows the integration to go a little smoother.
Oh. So choosing a good quality experienced training provider is key, right? Sounds like it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think often that we don't interview the training company or the trainers like we do with the employees.
Right.
But we're going to expose our employees to that person. They're going to listen to every single word that person says.
Right.
And be guided by them and how to perform their job. Maybe we should get a really good idea as to who that person is before they start training and influencing our employees.
So interviewing the training provider as well is key.
Absolutely.
And I guess there's also different styles of learning as well. So in putting like assessments together, you can determine that as well from interacting with the users, the employees.
Absolutely. I think that different people learn differently. So of course that some people and certain topics, certain skills can be transferred better in different ways. I think it's really, really hard to demonstrate certain skills. And that can be done somewhat better with a computer-based training, where it's inanimate, where there's repetition required. You don't necessarily need an individual in place to do that. Let me give you an example. When we first had to start training people, you remember, that had never used a mouse device before.
Yep.
So if they had any computer skills, were used to typing code on a keyboard. And all of a sudden, there was this graphical user interface. It was the most amazing thing to see. I don't think it's something that could really be taught by a computer. It needed an individual to see the shock on that person's face when they realized what was happening with this device. And I think we probably trained 3,000 or 4,000 people in the use of mouse skills, and realized that it needed that personal interaction from someone that also had to learn the skill. Ever been taught by a driver as a learner that supposedly was able to drive all their life because they couldn't remember for one moment that they were not able to drive at one point? I think that that's the other thing that one looks for in a training provider, an ounce of humility in understanding that some skills are difficult and challenging to take on. And I think that way it is done at a pace that only an individual probably can work out.
And I guess we're seeing now that AI is now entering the workplace, so that creates a whole another set of challenges, right?
I mean, it's a topic on its own, isn't it? As wonderful as it can be, similar to research through some form of research search engine, it requires skill to use.
Okay.
Otherwise, one can be led astray.
Okay.
But I don't think it's replaced the value of an individual being able to engage with a person in bringing up their skill, that has a personal interest in them upskilling themselves.
Oh, interesting. Okay, thank you so much, Colin. This has been really interesting. I've appreciated this conversation because it's been practical, and it also leads into regeneration, because when we talk about regeneration, we're talking about building things that last. And about skills, it actually relates to regeneration, because we're building the people that will support the organizations going forward. So in this podcast, we often talk about regeneration in terms of systems, food systems, and infrastructure. But organizations are also systems, and they also regenerate. But we do need to build the people inside and develop the people to support the regeneration of those organizations. So capability isn't a nice to have, right? We know that now. It's either being strengthened or we're slowly eroding it. So if we're not building the people and the skills, we're slowly eroding their confidence, their ability to do their job if we're not training them up. When organizations consciously design for growth, for learning, reflection, and behavioral change, they build resilience. And to me, that's regeneration in practice. Not speed, not optics, and not short-term output. But strengthen the system from the inside outwards is what we're talking about today. So, Colin, before we close, if you were to leave our listeners with one final thought, one piece of advice for leaders thinking about future performance, what would that be?
A final thought. Well, that would be to suggest that future performance, more often than not, requires versatile and adaptable skills.
Okay.
Well understood systems, internal systems within the organization, and an executive willingness to change.
Okay. So thank you, Colin, so much for your time today. It's a powerful way to close off and to share that information with and your experience with our listeners, because stronger organizations don't happen by accident. They're actually designed. So thank you all for listening. This is Regen on Purpose, and it's building what lasts. Thank you. Bye. Thank you for listening to Regen on Purpose. Sustainability is a starting point. Regeneration is the natural progression. Until next time, design for strength and start building what lasts.